Hey guys, today we're in week number 3 in our God and Money series, and that means we finally get to talk about budgeting. Now, we're going to approach this a little bit differently than most budgeting series would approach it because we're taking a look at it from a biblical point of view. After all, your money is not yours, it's God's. You're just managing it. And that means you should budget it the way God says to do it. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about what I consider to be the first part of budgeting, which is to talk about your giving. And then next week, we'll talk about saving, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with spending. Now, here's where we're going to start this particular lesson. Giving is a commandment for every believer, not the spiritual gifting of a select few. In other words, you don't have to be wealthy to be a giver. Some of you might be coming to this series saying, are you serious? I wanted to take a budgeting series because I don't have any money. So why would I start with giving? Well, you'll see why as we go through this together. If you get your mind right, if you get right with God, then you can get right with money. This whole thing works together. We see this concept so clearly in 2 Corinthians 8, where Paul writes, "Now I want you to know what God in his kindness has done through the churches in Macedonia." So he's writing to the church in Corinth, but he's using the church in Macedonia as an example. He says, "They are being tested by many troubles, and they are very poor." Okay, so can some of you relate to them now? And look at what he says. "But they are also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more. And they did it of their own free will." So as you're getting ready to budget and think about how you want to spend your money from month to month, I think you can take a lesson from the Macedonians. They didn't actually think about giving as something only the rich people should do. Even in their poverty, they said, I want to give. And notice the result of it was joy. And I think you'll have that same effect in your life. If you give, even in your poverty, even if you're trying to sort of stretch your dollars from month to month, I think you're going to find that you're going to love it. Here's what we learn as we continue on in 2 Corinthians. Your budget is a litmus test for your heart. Those who put God first in their lives put giving first in their budgets. This is exactly what happened in the church in Macedonia. It says that the Macedonians begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. They even did more than we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. Now, I want you to see that the Macedonians got right with God first, and then they were able to get right with their money, with their giving, with their budgeting. And this is what I hope for you. We're going to eventually talk about spending as far as your budget is concerned. We're going to talk about saving as far as your budget is concerned. But first and foremost, we want to talk about giving, because if you're right with God, you'll be right with your money. And then I think everything else in your life can go right. That's why the Macedonians were so filled with joy. So here's the practical part. Leverage the power of habit for God's purposes, not your pleasure. And that means I encourage you to make a habit of giving a small percentage each month, and then try to grow that percentage every year. Let's go back to the text one more time, then we're going to get into some budgeting together. 1 Corinthians 16:2, Paul says, "On the first day of each week, you should put aside a portion of the money you have earned. Don't wait until I get there and then try to collect it all at once." So see, Paul is encouraging them to develop a discipline, a habit of putting aside money first and foremost when it comes to giving. And then 2 Corinthians 8:7 says this, "Since you excel," he's talking to the Corinthians, "in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love from us, I want you to also excel in this gracious act of giving." In other words, Paul is telling the Corinthians to take a cue from the Macedonians and sort of up their giving game. So if you want to grow in giving and start your budget the right way, here's what I encourage you to do. Budget your giving in 3 categories: church, ministries, and gifts. and use a simple budget spreadsheet to keep track of it all. Now, we've put one together that you can use. You can see the link below this video. So I encourage you to click on that template and then make a copy of it for your own purposes so that you can edit it and use it for your budget. And we'll be filling this in over the next couple of weeks as we build our budgets together. So in the giving section, I encourage you to replace these 3 custom categories with those categories I just mentioned: church, ministries, and gifts. Now let's start filling out our budget template together, starting with our income and our giving. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to give us a total income of $3,000 for income 1 and $500 a month for income number 2, for a total income of $3,500. Now, if your goal was to give a tithe to your church, 10% of your total income to your church, you'd want to input $350 to give to your church. And you'll notice down below that the total percentage then of your income is calculated for you in the spreadsheet. You're at 10%. But I recognize that for many of you, that is way too much if you're not used to giving a tithe yet. So instead of 10% of your total income going to giving, let's just start with a smaller goal. Let's set our goal at 2% for our giving. And here's how we can break that up. Let's say you just start giving $35 a month to your local church. That's 1% of your total income for the month, and we're halfway to our giving goal. And then let's say that you give $10 a month to your favorite missionary, and you put aside $25 a month for gifts to people in your world so that you can just start being a generous person to the people around you. So our total giving now is $70 a month, and that represents 2% of our total income. Now, for some of you, this seems like a lot of money. For some of you, this seems like a little bit of money. But the goal is to start pushing this giving number upward. My wife and I, when we first got married, were able to give just a little bit on a regular basis, but we grew in the grace of giving, just like the churches in Macedonia. And now we give over 17% of our total income back to the church and to ministries like PursueGOD and to the people in our world that need to be blessed. And we love doing that last thing. We love giving gifts to people in need. So I encourage you to download this budget template and start filling it out, beginning with the giving category, and then scroll down to the savings section and the needs section and the wants section. Go ahead and fill out your budget spreadsheet the way it makes the most sense for you. And don't mess with any of the cells that are colored, because those contain formulas that will help compute the totals for you as you fill out your spreadsheet. Now, next week, we'll come back to this as we talk about the second part of your budget, which is savings. And then we'll finish up in the 5th week of our series by talking about spending and how to spend in a way that honors God. But let's finish this lesson by returning to 2 Corinthians 8. Here's what Paul says. Remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop, but the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. And then Paul finishes with this promise. God will generously provide all you need, and then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. So if you believe that, you'll start your budgeting process with giving.